Hello folks, I'll give it that minute to let people log on. I've finished all the presidential UNSC publications, rules governing June 28th, 2022's open debate of the United Nations Security Council, specifically rules that go with countries who provide peacekeepers. Canada does provide peacekeepers. They are an original country of the United Nations Security Council, original founding member, in fact, of the United Nations. But they haven't served for a very long time. New Zealand, exactly like Canada, exactly defined constitutionally, where they give their sovereignty exclusively to the United Kingdom. They've been there even in recent times, just less than 7 years ago. Australia's been there too. They've been there even post-Canada. Canada hasn't been there since absolutely early 2000. That's it for Canada. Canada can't and probably won't ever serve on the United Nations Security Council ever again. But others do and have. And there's been some rules put in, grabbed over years. I've listed the years. Singapore, Botswana in Africa. I got through all that. Beautiful. Proposes great rules. In fact, great rules that reflect international treaties between nations. And it is this treaty between nations that I'm going to argue to win the United States of America. Try. Because the problem is Joe Biden doesn't have a very good track record at all in all his 40 years as a politician in the United States of America of ever doing anything, and I mean anything. So absolutely nothing for the American Indian, none whatsoever. He's never led a charge on that, which would lead me to believe that he doesn't like the American Indian. Your record speaks for itself. Now, there's been other American presidencies. We have an old treaty, 1794, the Jay Treaty. USA negotiated with Great Britain to give the American Indian full access to Canada whenever they want, and Canadian Indians to have full access to the United States whenever they want. Canada doesn't honor this treaty. They say, look, UK's gone. We're the crown now. Just as I've been trying to tell you folks. You can even see the Supreme Court judgment with Francis. And that was done post-1952, folks. Meaning, Canada has the crown. As I've stated always and forever in a day, the UK doesn't have it. Not since the death of King George VI. That was the day the Liberals and Conservatives together forever picked up the crown and put it on their head, and have held it ever since, and will never give it to anybody else. They will forever and always be in charge of all the federal and provincial crown lands. They make sure no premier will ever cement the division of powers promised by the design of the United Kingdom in 1867, but they will never ever do that. They like the full crown autocracy. Now, this is not the United States of America. This is not the American Indian of the United States of America. The judgment of the Supreme Court in British Columbia is what we call Cascadia. It's an area where no longer do the American Indians the American Indian or the Canadian Indian exists. The Jay Treaty acknowledges and understands that the same First Peoples of Canada are the same First Peoples of the United States of America, and that the boundary of the UN state of Canada and USA is not their boundary. The US gives us forever. They even outline an entire federal ministry giving all American Indians full federal division of powers. What does that mean? It means when you look at a chief in the United States of America, he's the equivalent of a state governor. and with a few more powers beyond that. The American federal government gives the American Indians their federalism because they created it. It's how America got federalism. UK and France were never federalist or not federalist and don't have a division of powers. Never did. That's an Indian creation. It's a political system of the Indians. Also, the same Indians of the former USSR and current Federation of Russia, who, lo and behold, Russia adopted federalism too. Where did they get that concept? Where did USA, Canada, and Russia get federalism from? Well, they got it from the American Indians and the Siberian Indians, all one peoples. You can look at the map, Cree, Ojibwe, we can go on and on, but you can watch it all overlap, all those regions. They're all entirely the same, folks. Now, they've all been wiped out of what is Cascadia, which is British Columbia. They're all wiped out, and it's largely unceded. Most is unceded. Canadian government is still at war with all the unceded Indians of British Columbia. That's why the Wet'suwet'en are constantly under siege and under attack. Now, Canada doesn't want to highlight this because America got rid of all Indian wars in the 20s. Canada in 2022, a full 100 years after the United States, is still at war with the Indians of British Columbia and Cascadia and the Indians of Ontario and Caledonia. Unfortunately, Quebec, they've all been wiped out and sequestered. Absolutely. Just go to Parliament at Quebec, look at the cannons, the high city, and you will find the history of what happened to the savage Indian of Quebec. That history goes 150 years before Canada was even a country. So the genocide from 1867 onward is also a Quebec genocide more than 150 years before that. We can get into the Atlantic provinces, but that is a different chapter, not of today. Jay Treaty. America made this deal for the First Peoples as they are growing as a country much older than Canada. Deadly against the British Empire. At least America was good at that time for the American Indian. You watch as history goes, the American Indian continues to win more and more. Yes, were there wars? Yes, but at least they're over now. The American Indian has 10 times the population as the Canadian Indians, all of them including Métis and Inuit. Further than this, the American Indian got a massive land settlement, 135% more land than all Canadians, all Inuit, Métis, and Treaty Indians alike, which is almost 40 million people, folks, compared to 6.7 million American Indians. So just think about that. Let that soak into your head. Let that soak into your head. The Jay Treaty provides that all Canadian Indians, American Indians go back and forth. But Canada says, no, no, no. We won't give any of that to any American Indian. Fuck you. Now, this is going to be the basis of how we're going to try and get residential school genocide to go through with the United States. We're going to go after them. We're not going to go after France or UK. I've read everything from New Zealand. They have tremendous power. Now, Botswana, full republic, full independent of 80 years of the British colonial empire. They got it in the 60s. They were president in 1996. They outlined a boatload to fight and go against what was established by New Zealand in 1994, although they refer to all of it. So I'm still not absolutely sure that if we don't win at least 3 of the P5 to sponsor our narrative and allow us to use the word genocide, or at least not us, but allow China to use it on our behalf, or Russia on our behalf, or hopefully the United States of America on our behalf, we're going to have to use this Jay Treaty. We're going to have to get American Indians motivated, and actually we do have some friends in places there. Ian Bjorkman is going to look at that, and he crosses the border all the time. We're going to try and get some letters from the American Indian folks, hopefully, and we're going to take that to use the Jay Treaty, challenge the Canadian government, and actually challenge for June 28th, putting USA in a good position, a really good position, civil rights position. I can't see Linda Thomas Greenfield rejecting that, but I don't know what Joe Biden's going to do, as he's the master commander-in-chief, and he can rule down Linda Thomas Greenfield. She's African-American with a history of slavery. You would think that this woman would be down with this, and I would think she would be, but like I said, she's not the President of the United States. Joe Biden doesn't have a good history with the American Indians. Like I said, he's never done nothing for them, so I don't suppose that he would change that now. But if we don't try, if we don't go to the American Indian, we don't push and press this, I don't see what other narrative there will be. Now, all reports from Canadian First Nations reporting to the ICC and the P5, they go in. They're not getting thrown away. They're getting put in. It's just what's being made available and publicly. That's the issue. I want it on video on June 28th. I want it brought up. I would love it for them to speak of Sidney Lee Halcoro's report. And I'd also like to utilize the Jay Treaty, highlight the strength of America, and see if we can get them on board with siding on this issue with Russia and China, on just this issue. I know they're all going with Ukraine, and that's fine, but I would like to see this brought up publicly for the entire world, publicly for NGOs, and absolutely publicly to tarnish Canada. At least Justin Trudeau, Pierre Poilievre, Jagmeet Singh, Yves Blanchette, and the list goes on and on. BBC, Green Party, Maxime Bernier, Elizabeth May's new subordinate who took over. I got to look at who that is. But it goes on and on. I just want to highlight what Canada is, what tremendous powers are vested in the UNSC through both France and Britain, when it really shouldn't be. You shouldn't have rotating presidencies that have a sworn allegiance to turn over all their international representation to the United Kingdom. And that is absolutely New Zealand, as seen in 1994. That is absolutely Australia, seen in other ones, including 2015-16, not on this narrative that's been brought forward. But that highlight of New Zealand, that shows everything, exactly where the corruption is, especially in the UNSC. I don't see why UK should have basically multiple presidential powers inside the UNSC, and I don't think France should either. These crimes against humanity, it's great that we highlight the Axis colonials. They lost the war, I get it, but technically so did France and UK. UK would have went right down, like I said, if it wasn't for the United States and the former Soviet Union and even China. That's the reality, folks. And you know what? I just think it's fair that we should all be on even footing. What we do and administer to the Axis powers from World War II should also be done to the colonial allies, as was promised to Joseph Stalin and Teddy Roosevelt by King George VI and absolutely Sir Winston Churchill. We should not be allowed to erase that history from a racist president named Joe Biden in the 2021 New Atlantic Charter, erasing everything in monumental civil and human rights founded in 1941's Atlantic Charter, decided in Newfoundland for the entire world, where we gave all of our ancestors lives fighting on the altar of freedom for the promise of what was to be America, and that narrative for the whole world. And yes, from the Soviet Union as well too, at least in federalism and real civil and human rights. When we take that away and we say, hey, though, that's to go away, who gives a shit about all those who gave their lives on the altar of freedom? We're going to rewrite a new one, a very socialist, a very sick Green New Deal that really benefits the elite few at the absolute expense of everybody else. No, I'm not into a class structure, first, second, and third. I'm not into the age of the Titanic and those getting locked down in the boiler rooms, or Americans who fought and gave their lives in World War II, who died on a boat because the first-class mighty European politicians needed to escape, so they locked them all below and couldn't even release all of those boats, those lifeboats that could have saved so many of them. And you would see 500 go to the bottom of the ocean, so that you gave all the first-class, divine, righteous European politicians of colonialism enough time to take their sweet-ass time to evacuate, so that all those others died. Captain does not go down with the ship in that system. The filthy, low, life degenerate third class does. That's class structure best explained. People can talk about admiralty law, admiral law of the seas, law of the seas. That is a League of Nations carryover, completely redesigned today since 1945, not allowing that kind of crap. But many countries still exist in that exact same political, cultural, economic design today. Canada is the worst one of all of them, and continues forever and a day. We will always find somebody to genocide. We will always have to worry about children, parental rights. We're always going to have to worry about that as long as we let it continue. It doesn't matter. Today, it may be the First Peoples, and it's been the longest running genocide, but we've seen it in homosexuals, in deaf people, in Ukrainians. We've seen it in Japanese, and the list goes on, and it will go on forever and a day. And even those, the anti-vax group, which I don't agree with, especially with diseases like AIDS. AIDS is real. Somebody's going around sharing that around communities because they don't believe in vaccines or don't believe in diseases. You should go to jail. But what was done in COVID and what Canada got away with highlighted exactly what they can do. We watch court judgments about people who didn't believe in COVID vaccines lose their children taken away, given to the other parent on custody, on parental rights, because the government deems that the way you want to raise your child isn't the way we like, so we're going to take those children from you. It's wrong, guys. It can get much worse. Destroying small businesses in the name of, in acts, not even in Parliament, acts done behind the scenes by a divine politician. It's wrong, wrong, wrong. Who is it really benefiting? Was the economic destruction of Canada, this massive inflation we have today, was that justified? No, it wasn't. And there's no democratic process that allows you to reconcile that. Just as there's never going to be any reconciliation for third-class Canadians or absolutely all the First Peoples of Canada who received the worst genocide known in the world today that shouldn't even be in existence since 1945. And those who do perpetuate it get put to the justice, the highest world justice. You can review all of it in the ICC. You can review all of it in the UNSC before the ICC, before they created their Roman statute court to take it off their plate. But they still will jump in anytime they want. Any or all five will jump in anytime they want. Now we have a chance June 28th to stand up to the new rules imposed on that most important of important days. And I'm going to try, and I'm going to appeal to the United States. I am forgoing France and UK. I will still appeal to them. I know the appeal won't work, but the focus is going to be on winning the United States of America, on their historical, monumental achievements in human and civil rights cemented right here in North America, and how Canada still will not acknowledge the U.S. or entertain anything to do with civil and human rights monumental achievements by the USA, bound to the world. They lie to the USA. They say, oh yeah, we'll sign it, no problem. But we're never going to administer any of it. And they don't. And America sits there blindly going along, and maybe a lot of businesses, large multinational businesses, have corrupted the American government. Maybe it is too far gone. I don't know. I know the Democrats have been completely taken over. I know dirty old Bernie Sanders with his rhetoric about labor, which I loved his video like so many others, but in his last two statements, he goes crown colonial and he betrays every American, all the unions, and absolutely the cause of labor. And that is wrong. That's the worst kind of frugal bullshit you could ever see. That's the worst kind of American, is the Bernie Sanders kind of American. After what all the Jews went through too, he's Jewish, I do believe, and it's like, I can't believe that he would perpetuate that crap. Knowing what Nazi Germany led to, he would say that this is a good system, that we should follow the crown. And that's exactly what he does. It's wrong. It's despicable. Democrats are in charge right now. I don't know. I don't even know if a President Donald Trump would be down with this. He sure went for Baron Black. He sure screwed over American media in his last pardon of Baron Black. And for all Americans, you can look at your news medias and you can see just how many stories are written by Canadians, not subject to your Constitution, not subject to the laws of America, and then they call it opinion news. You can't even get an American who went through school to become a reporter, go through journalism. You can't even get them in their mighty civics and human rights and love of America to write that kind of propaganda stories. But you can sure get Canadians, you can sure get United Kingdom writers, you can sure get corporate interests vested in London to do it. It's sick, it's wrong, it's against the United States of America. And we're going to try this fight. That's the one we have to win. That's the only option we have, and I know it looks bleak, but that's what I'm going to do, and it will be published for everybody, written, articulated, put on Facebook, put on Twitter, pumped out to the 5 allies, and it will be emailed to all the chiefs, the ICC, the Intercircumferential Polar Council of the United States of America and Russia, in the ICC, not the International Criminal Court, but the ICC of the Arctic Council, but specifically only Russia and USA, the UN elders, and of course, Karim Khan, all 5 allies. We're going to get that done, and all the chiefs that we've gone to so far who have reportable bodies will get that articulated in all its original content, and you'll see it on Twitter publicly too. I'm going to pound it out to the allies. I don't care. This is a log for people in case something does happen, in case somebody did come after me, or something happens. You just never know. At least maybe down the road somebody else could pick that up and take the intellectual property and run with it. I'm not saying that's going to happen. You just don't know, because I'll show you in history a lot of people banging on these doors, banging these drums. They don't make it. They don't make it, folks. So I don't know. I'm going to try. Let's just see what happens. That's all you can do. God bless. Share. Get it out there. Bye now.